Now we can start. Hello, everyone. My name is Keith. This is Mario Vizik. And today, we're going to talk to you about continuous deployment with Rails. The original talk title was Keith and Mario's Guide to Continuous Deployment with Rails, but they shortened it to just continuous deployment. So we retaliated by making it longer. Continuous deployment, or why automatically deploying your master branch to production is a good idea. Full stop. That's the name of our title. You may remember us from such presentations as Keith and Mario's Guide to Fast Websites that we did last year, and the highly informative Lightning talk Mario did on Lightning. Yep. This is Mario Vizik, the modern man haircut. He works at Envato. You may have heard of him, company. He lives in Melbourne. That's a picture of a laneway in Melbourne. There are nerds there. And there are also, wait for it, hipsters. What? Thank you. Thank you very much. That's it. They have coffee, which is great. They have real coffee, unlike Perth, as we'll find out soon. And a little fun fact, taking on some of what we were saying before. Fun facts, Mario in the future would like to be a dojillionaire. I'm not sure if you've... Photoshop, man. It's a hell of a drug.
I'm quarter of the way there.
Yeah. Is that like $3?
It's, 7 or 8, I think,
okay,
yeah.
Okay.
Oh, yes. Let's get into it. Thanks, Keith, for that excellent segment.
No worries, Mario.
This is my good friend, Keith Pitt, my dear friend, Keith Pitt. For some reason, every single photo we could find of him, he was eating a different Apple product. It's a different one. I think it's a MacBook Air, the other one's an iPad.
Yep.
He works for a mob called Pin Payments, whose role is to make payments in Australia easier and better. And they do that from their headquarters in Western Australia. All of Western Australia looks as beautiful as this. Mm-hmm. It's actually where I'm from originally as well. Western Australia has this lovely place called Little Creatures in Fremantle. It's one of my favorite places to go. And it's where Keith found his love of beer originally.
Oh, fun fact about Little Creatures. Everyone knows Darcy Laycock. He did a talk before. We went there once with Darcy and he ordered a pizza, the sea salt pizza. It sounded good. It was just pizza base with a little bit of salt on top.
Yeah.
So pro tip, sea salt pizza is no-go.
It's expensive bread.
Yeah.
Expensive bread.
$18 for some salt and some dough.
For all of you from Western Australia, you might, or if you've heard of Western Australia as a place, it's renowned for its mining and its fly-in, fly-out workers, which come with high-visibility vests.
High-vis.
You can see our Prime Minister here sporting his.
I have a theory about high-vis vests.
What's that, Keith?
You could commit any crime in a high-vis vest and get away with it. Think about it. If I could go like steal a car with a high-vis vest, and high-vis vest is such like it's an authoritative type uniform. You don't mess with someone with a high-vis.
I think I could break into a construction site. That's about it.
Exactly.
Western Australia is also famous for its lovely flavored milk, which is full of sugar. One of these has more sugar per content than a can of Coke.
So it's,
but delicious.
It's not paleo then?
No.
Okay.
Not real coffee, but excellent tasting coffee. Another fun fact, as Josh had already mentioned earlier, is Keith won a little award in 2007.
Yeah, but we told you the wrong thing.
Unfortunately, it was the wrong one. He won an award for his impressive skills in archery.
Yeah. I was South Australian Archery Champion of the Year in 2007.
Yes.
Yep.
Keith and I worked on a couple of websites together where we've developed some of the techniques that we're going to be talking about. One of them, as Sebastian mentioned earlier, is Microlancer, which is made by the nice folks at Envato. So it's to help freelancers sell their digital services online, and they do that quite well. Keith and I also built a wallpaper sharing website that uses Dropbox as its backend, which is very easy to use. And Keith also now works on a semi-hosted CI service, a continuous integration service, called BuildBox. So if you think of something like Jenkins, but with a hosted UI, that's what BuildBox is.
It's a bit like TeamCity as well.
A bit like TeamCity.
Yeah, TeamCity. Yeah. It's pretty good. It's an alternative to TeamCity, I would say.
Okay. Okay. So before we get into this, we want to have a little bit of a quiz. So can I get anyone in the audience who has an application in production, who writes tests for it, can I get you to raise your hands, please? Okay. Good majority. Okay, can I get you to not put them down and keep them raised? Okay. Can I get you to put your hands down if you don't have a CI or a dedicated test server that picks up your builds? Okay, majority of you. Great, excellent. Okay, can I get you to keep your hands up if once the build is green, a production deploy occurs? Okay.
Damn.
Everyone with their hands up, you've graduated. There's nothing here
High five!
of value. High five, everyone. There's nothing here of value. John is doing an excellent talk upstairs. I think best up there, yes.
Yeah.
Also, anyone who didn't originally raise your hands, maybe best there as well. It's on testing. So let's begin with some terminology. Okay, there's these two terms. One is called continuous delivery, and one is called continuous deployment. I just had a chat with a very nice gentleman in the hall, and I mixed the terms up a little bit. So the difference between the two is continuous delivery involves the entire process where you have a CI server that picks up your build. It continuously integrates that, and then once it's finished, it will provide you with a status, and then you can optionally deploy that to production. So the deploy that you do to production is the final manual step. The difference is continuous deployment, we automate that step. So if you hear us talking about continuous deployment, we're talking about the bottom thing. This is the thing that we're going to be talking about during our presentation.
Yeah, so why would you want to do continuous deployment? Let's find out why together. There are three major aspects of continuous deployment, I would say, or we both would say, in fact. First one's fast feedback. We don't really know what's going to increase conversions in a website. We have theories. We've got pretty good guesses, but we don't really know until we get it into production and start monitoring. So getting these small changes out, these small experiments, if you will, out to production and then monitoring is a really, really good thing. And we believe continuous deployment really helps that. So fast feedback's one. Confidence. Sometimes human deploys don't go so well. If you're nervous about getting a bug out or you've broken something, you need to get a deploy out quickly, that could be quite error prone. I know I've stuffed up a couple of deploys in my time, and it's not pretty because you just feel like crap afterwards. So the good thing about continuous deployment is it gives you confidence in your deployment pipeline. The last one is predictability. You want to be able to predict that the same process will happen over and over again. Like you know exactly what's going to happen because it's all programmatically programmed. Now, let's take a look at these three things. I wonder what they would look like on a Venn diagram. This is what these three things looks like on a Venn diagram. I'm not sure if this is the correct usage of a Venn diagram. At this point, it's merely just overlapping circles. So I thought I would add the center thing to make it a Venn diagram. I really didn't know how to make this slide work, so I just put some circles on it. Moving on.
Thanks, Keith.
Yeah, thanks, man. Oh, still, of course it is. Yeah. As the famous saying goes, Mario, you can't do continuous deployment without breaking a few omelets. So let's look at the ingredients of continuous deployment. Bam, 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 bam. I was too fast for it. It's all right. These are the things that we're going to need to do continuous deployment, but don't be too scared because we're going to go through them each one by one, talk about them, how you can do it, and the easy ways and the hard ways of each. So, first one, feature planning. Let's have a little chat about feature planning. What is the smallest thing that you can ship today? You're given tasks to make a feature. It could be a relatively large feature. The point of feature planning is to try and break up that feature into lots of small chunks. Let's do this small bit today, this small bit tomorrow, deploy, 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 and then maybe in 2 weeks, the whole thing's like written and go. So you can do these small changes and then eventually get to the end goal one at a time.
Yep. And Sebastian actually, earlier, if you were at his talk, talked a bit about this, where there's a bunch of other benefits you get. If we start shipping small increments, then we break up large features, and we might find in the end that we don't even need to ship the end parts.
Yeah,
so,
yeah, because code changes quick. How do you deploy the feature you're about to write with zero downtime? Let's say you're introducing Redis into your stack or some other piece of technology. how can we deploy this thing without bringing the site down for maintenance? That's an important question you need to ask yourself when making a feature. Sometimes it could just be like, it's fine. Code goes out, change goes up. But sometimes it's a little more complex. So you just ask the question. The last part of feature planning is how we handle database migrations. If any of you have done zero downtime before, you'll know database migrations are a pain. We'll talk about it later, but it's something you need to talk about during the feature planning stage. Code reviews. This is a picture of Bill Gates looking at paper. This is serious business, guys. GitHub pull requests. GitHub changed the whole QA process, I think. Like, GitHub pull requests are such a vital part of our workflows. I'll write a feature in a feature branch, push it to GitHub, Mario will QA it, usually +1. Yep. I would say always +1. And then when we hit the merge button, we would that deploy to production. This is a pull request if you haven't seen one before. They look a little bit like this. I don't think this was a real, I think this was a fake pull request, by the way.
And the pull requests become a bit more important because what we're doing is any single commit that's now getting into our master branch is going to be in production a short time later. So it's really important that you get feedback before the features go out, because otherwise what's going to happen is if you're being what's called a master maverick, it's a bit of a no-no, master maverick. If you're just working on that branch, any commits you're doing, they're going to be in production. So it's quite important that you get some sanity checks, making sure that no security holes, no obvious performance problems, anything like that.
Yeah, and it really changed the way that I do my coding. Like, I'm writing a piece of code and I know this thing will be in production in about 10 minutes. Yeah. So it really makes me think, well, this is not that good. How can I write this with a bit more stability? There's a couple of easy ways to do QA. There's a tool called Kane by Square. It just does some analysis on your code base. It'll check the line lengths of methods and alert you if they're too long. We've got part of our build process and it's worked quite well.
It does complexity checks as well, so it'll actually make sure you're not calling your actual methods themselves aren't too complex, so it can tell you when you need to refactor quite easily. So we can use that as part of the build process, which we'll get into a bit later. And
another one is RubyConf, which is pretty cool. It does some. It looks at your code and see if it adheres to the Ruby standard style guidelines. It's pretty sweet. It checks like you make sure the right hash syntax, those sorts of things. So there's another tool for you to check out.
It's wrong about single quotes.
We're talking, buddy. I'm sorry, but that's. I love you. Feature toggles. We've heard them a million times. Anyone not know what a feature toggle is? Skip these slides. Nah, they're pretty important. So pretty much you wrap a conditional around a flow or a feature and you turn it on and off without having it to deploy. That's pretty much the basic idea of a feature toggle. The easiest way to do this is keep it ghetto. Like, when you think of feature toggles, it's not this complex, big thing. Like, if it's a new flow, and to get to that flow, there's a button, just hide the button. Like, it's a pretty simple thing to do.
I always find a lot of the times when we do features, we normally just hide the user interfacing parts. And if someone can actually find that endpoint to hit and do that certain new feature, then well done. It's like a little treasure for them. Yeah, I'm really not too fussed if you want to use this brand new feature that might not be finished and is possibly broken. So
good on them.
Yeah, I would love to get a support request with that.
A couple of gems to make this a little easier for you. One's called rollout. This is the one that we use. It's pretty simple. Yeah, that's the gem. And the other gem that is called flip. Flip is another gem that does feature toggling. This one's a little more complex. It's got like an interface you can use and a few other really nice features. This one's quite enterprisey for the advanced user. Rollout is quite good for the,
lighter.
The lighter, non-enterprise user, I would say. Yeah.
So if we're doing automated deployments, we also want to do automated tests. Now, one good thing to do when you're doing your tests is to make sure you write just enough to trust the code and nothing more. And the reason why we want to do this is we want to make sure that our tests are fast. Our tests are now part of our build pipeline. If our tests are slow, it means our deploys are slow. It means from the time that I finish a feature to the time it's in production, it's going to grow. So we want to make sure that our tests are quick. One easy way to do that is just to sort of lower the level where you're writing your tests. So rather than writing many integration tests, you can write one sort of overarching integration test for the entire feature and then focus on doing more unit tests. There's a bunch of other techniques as well that you can use to speed up your tests. I'd suggest you check out this excellent talk by Corey Haynes called Fast Rails Tests. This is from the Golden Gate Ruby conference in 2011. So if you just search for Corey Haynes Fast Rails Tests, it should appear. Another important type of test that we're going to need to start adding which we might not have had before, is smoke tests. So the importance of a smoke test is it's actually a test that runs once our deployment has already occurred. So it's just a little sanity check that we sort of run. So a smoke test can be as simple as, if I go to the homepage, the name of the product should appear, and that might be it. And initially, that might be OK to verify that your deploys have happened, but over time, we want to sort of build out what it does. So we're essentially replacing the manual checking that you would normally do once you do a deploy with an automated process. So we automate our deploys, and we automate the checking that goes with them. One cool thing you can do is if you do have any integration tests that are running against the app, so if you've got some capybara tests that are running against in the web browser against your local server, you can reuse those same tests and test a remote server. The one thing to be careful of here is if you're doing things which are changing data, so for example, you're creating a user or you're deleting records, you obviously want to be careful when you're running that against a staging or production environment because it's going to change. We might not necessarily want to create a user every single time we deploy, which is going to be quite often. So the next thing is zero downtime deploys, as Keith mentioned. These are going to be much more important than they were to you before. And the reason is we're going to be deploying much more often. So a zero downtime deploy is essentially performing a deployment without any interruption to the user. So if a user is using your website, they shouldn't be aware that a deploy has occurred. Sure, if features have changed, they should see that immediately, but it shouldn't stop them, and they shouldn't get a maintenance page, which is how we might do a simple sort of deploy. And they're much more important because we're going to be deploying many more times a day. We're going to be deploying smaller chunks, so we definitely don't want to put a maintenance page up 10 times a day. If you are running on Heroku, it traditionally has been a bit difficult to do this. You would have to wait for the application to boot each time you deploy. So the first time the user hits it after a new deploy, the app spins up, and it can take maybe 30 seconds or so. So you imagine a user is sitting there with no feedback for 30 seconds. So one cool thing you can do is Heroku have this feature called preboot, which is available in their labs packages. So if you run this command, it'll enable preboot. And essentially what it does is it'll spin up a new application, but keep your users going to your old running app. And then a couple minutes later, the user will be directed to the new app, and then the old one will shut down gracefully. So even if you are running on Heroku, you still can do zero downtime deploys with your continuous deployment. If you're not on Heroku, there's a very great Railscast tutorial, which runs through a Unicorn, I believe. And if you're running a different web server than Unicorn, there is plenty of documentation online. So you want to be looking for zero downtime deploys is the term. One big problem with the deployments that you're going to need to overcome is our migrations. So it's by far the trickiest part. So
very tricky.
Very tricky.
On a scale of 1 to tricky, Mario.
Tricky.
Yeah, I would agree.
Let's say we add a migration like this. So we are removing this column we no longer need called notes on our user. So what we might do traditionally is we might remove all the code that references our notes column, and then we add this migration into the mix, and then we run this migration we put the application into maintenance mode, we run our deploy, and then we turn it back off. So with our zero downtime deploys, we don't want that maintenance page up. And once we deploy, we get something like this. So one problem with the way Rails handles active record models is when your application boots, the database is inspected, and all of the columns are extracted out and are kept in memory. So when we boot our app, the app knew that it had a notes column on the users table. And so every single time we go to do an update or an insert or any operation on the users table, it's going to try and insert a value into this column. It's probably going to be null, but it's still going to try and do it. So we need to sort of protect against that. That's one of the big problems that you'll run into. Easy way, just do a maintenance page. So this is very simple. Depending on how small your data is, how quick your migrations are going to run, this may be feasible or it might not be, but it's by far the simplest way. So if you detect any migrations in your deploy, you can put maintenance made on, run those migrations, then take it out. So any deploys that don't have any migration changes, no problem, zero downtime, but the ones that do have migrations, we use this maintenance page. The better way, the harder way, is to account for these changes. So we need to be able to have the application respond correctly from the time that we run the migrations to the time that the new app comes alive. Because users are going to be hitting the old app with the migrations changed. So Once again, there's an excellent article by Pedro Bello, and he explains how to do this, and he explains how to get around this problem with our schema changing, so to avoid that error that we were getting before. Another problem with the migrations, I did say it was hard.
Yeah, it was, on a scale of 1 to hard, I'm pretty sure you said it was hard.
Hard.
Yeah.
Locking. So certain databases, not naming anyone's in particular, will lock either rows or tables while you're doing migration. So
MySQL.
If you're running a long migration, for example, if there's a lot of data that you're changing, you may be running into a table lock, which means that your users aren't going to be able to actually do any inserts or updates on any of that data until it is finished. So you definitely need to get around that if you're using those databases. MySQL in particular has this problem, but I'm not sure about any other ones. You'll just have to sort of figure out, I suppose, for your database what works and what doesn't. If you are using MySQL, there's a great project called the Large Hadron Migrator. Clever name. And it will solve that problem for you. So we actually do use this on one of our other projects at Envato, and it seems to work quite well.
I think we can all agree that sometimes shit happens. It does. I mean, Mara, have you ever been to the airport?
A week after you, in fact, and I took that exact same photo.
Well, what I was going to say was I took this photo first.
Yeah.
And it's a picture of one of the terminals. I'm not sure what's happening with the thing that shows you the flights, but from what I can see, it's the Matrix. Problems all the time. Have you ever opened your wallet, I would say, and then got like a burst of flames in the wallet?
Whoa!
Hello! Has that ever happened to you before?
It hasn't, Keith. I can't say that it has.
Yes, thank you. Thank you.
I can't say that it has. Whoa.
The point is, shit happens.
Yeah. Glad that I was...
Syringed. Syringed? I don't know. So, stop the talk now. When shit happens when you deploy, the best course of action is to roll forward. With continuous deployment, we don't generally have an approach of how can we roll back this entire deploy. We take the stance of, well, if we can't do that, what other options do we have? We've spoken about feature toggles. The first thing you can do is just turn the feature off. Remember how we were implementing feature toggles before? We push something live and we think, crap, this is not working as inspected. Let's just turn it off. No one will be the wiser. And we can fix it and then silently push it back up again. If that's not an option, you've got another choice of git revert and then just push again to master. This will then go through the automatic deploy flow, and it will be on production in a few minutes.
You have to be careful in this particular approach. If you have migrations, obviously that you're going to have to take those into account.
Yeah.
But otherwise, it's a very sensible principle.
Yeah.
And one of the key things we're focusing on is to make sure that those changes that we're deploying are so small that the chances of anything going wrong are quite small. Yeah. And if something does go wrong, it's going to be in the thing that you just shipped. The thing that you just shipped is all that's been changed. And so if you're looking for what's caused production to break, it's that thing that you just wrote.
Yeah, it sounds so simple. Now, obviously, there are going to be times where you've got the worst case scenario. Something you just can't deal with the problem. Your best bet is just to turn the maintenance page on. Remember how we talked about maintenance
Safety
page
barrier.
before?
Yeah,
it's just like pulling the plug out of the thing that's on fire in your house. I'm not sure that would do much, though, thinking about it. It will remain on fire, I'm pretty sure. You can just turn on maintenance page. We've done this before. Like we've pushed something, it's gone to the home page. We were a little bit of a master maverick at the time, and people started seeing it, and we thought, oh crap, pull down maintenance. So you've always got that in your toolbox if you need to. The next big thing we want to talk about is monitoring. It's a very important part of any continuous deployment. The first thing you want to think about is bug tracking. This is Bugsnag. This is one that Mara and I have used on a lot of different projects. It's pretty good. It just tracks bugs. Everyone knows what this is. This is one that we use. But if you're doing continuous deployment, you're going to need one of these things in place. Performance monitoring is another big part of continuous deployment. This is New Relic. There is really no other option, I think, at this point for performance monitoring. So this is kind of your go-to tool if you want to know if your application is getting slower or faster. Another thing you might want to track is business-level metrics, like user signups or user registrations. Lots of different things. There's a really great talk by David Goodlad on how to do business-level metric monitoring. You just Google for David Goodlad, computer says no, business metric monitoring, and you should probably find it. Yep. Now, all these things are good, but there's no real use if these systems aren't talking back to you. So we recommend PagerDuty. PagerDuty will give you a nice call when something goes wrong. You get a nice computer calling you, telling you that CloudWatch is broken. I'm not sure if anyone's used PagerDuty, but the voice is quite strange. So this thing will call you in early hours of the morning, telling you that something's broken. It's pretty good. So that's a great way to get fast feedback, I would say.
So we've gone through the ingredients that we need to do our deploys. Let's try it out.
Time to mix.
Time to mix them together.
Mix it up. I'm sorry, I'm not going to stop. I won't do that again.
OK. So we're going to build out a little script to do our deploys. So we're going to put it on our CI server. So initially, we might start off with something like this. And it basically just means that once our code makes it to our master branch, it's going to pick that code up, and it's going to deploy it. Here, you can see we're just using Heroku for simplicity. And in the script as well, we've got a couple of flags at the top. They're going to come into effect on the next slide. But essentially, we just want to print out everything that's happening. And if any command fails, we'll stop there, and we won't continue any further. But essentially, we'll just push to master. This is OK, perhaps if you haven't released a product to anyone yet. But for more developed products, you obviously want some sort of confidence to make sure everything's happening as is. So what we're going to do is we're going to add a couple checks. So first, we're going to use static analysis. The quality rake task actually comes from the Kame gem. So it's going to stop the build if you write a method that's too long. It's going to stop the build if your complexity is too high. It's going to stop the build if your code isn't valid. It's going to stop the build for a number of things. So that's really good. If the quality is OK, we run the tests. And if the tests are fine, then we deploy to production. Once we've deployed to production, we also want to do that check. We want to do that smoke test. So we want to make sure that the homepage says what it should do, that you can sign up, that you can do any number of things that we want to check there. And over time, those checks will build up to be more comprehensive. But the problem here is we're still not that confident because we're sort of going from our test straight to production. What if one of our migrations isn't going to work? What if something breaks in our build? What if that stuff happens? What we can do is we can use our staging environment. So we can use our staging environment a bit differently to what you would traditionally use it as. So we use it for the sanity checks. So instead of deploying to production, we deploy to staging. We then run those same smoke tests on the staging environment before pushing it out to production. And the great benefit here is we have this safety net now. If our migrations fail and it takes down the site, it's going to take down staging and only staging and not production. In Sebastian's talk, he actually mentioned that it's good to use a subset of production data locally when you're developing. I think it's also good to have a subset of production data in your staging environment. The reason is the migrations will run against the same data that they're getting run against in production. If there's any problems, they're going to be found then and not when we push to production. So this is a really good way to get more confidence in our deploys. And we've automated this, so there's no room for human error. And if there is any errors, we can fix it up.
So let's put together everything we've learned today into a workflow. We're going to show you how Mario and I develop features. Mario, last year, Keith and Mario's Guide to Fast Websites. Did you see it?
Yes.
Yeah, it was pretty good.
I saw the talk.
Yeah, it was great. In there, we talked a lot about social media buttons and the effect that they have on your website, which, from what I've heard, they can do great things.
Great things. So many likes.
Conversions.
All the likes.
LinkedIn. So we're gonna implement these changes onto Desktopper, which is our wallpaper sharing site. Yesterday, I started coding up the feature. I was getting really into it, and I think I've got something great for you to look at. What do you think?
Oh. Maybe some more, Keith?
I've got Twitter.
On the end.
I've got the Pinterest one.
I'm not sure why there's two LinkedIns.
I've got two LinkedIns for the extra business people.
Yeah.
And so I'm pretty happy with this feature, Mario.
Yep.
I'm gonna push this feature to my feature branch.
Great.
And then I'm gonna that's what I'm gonna do, and I'm gonna tell you about it right now.
Yep. And you're gonna open up a GitHub pull request.
I do. Yep.
Yep.
But first, you're doing some stuff.
Okay.
Yep.
So I'm at my desk, casually doing some work, reading a book about ponies.
There is a book of ponies, very bottom.
And I receive this pull request. So Keith says, Mario, when you've got a moment, can you look at this request? I'd like to get it into production.
Hey, Mario, when you have a moment, can you look at this pull request? I'd like to get it into production.
Great. So I have a look at the pull request, and I see this amazing site.
It's
and I think that's pretty rad. So I think that's good. So I +1 it.
Yeah, great. Whoa, wait.
Oh.
So Mario loves the feature. He thinks it's great. At this point, I come back to it, and I hit the merge pull request button because it's my feature. Yep. The feature branch gets merged into master, then this script runs that we wrote before. Exactly the same thing. It's going to run the quality checks. It's going to run the test suite. It's going to push the staging, make sure the staging is OK. It's going to push production, then make sure production's OK. And all this is part of your build script, as in your CI. Here's a picture of what it looks like in BuildBox, which is an alternative to TeamCity. This is what it would look like. So once it's on production, no one's going to see it yet because it's behind a feature flag. So let's turn it on. This is how you would activate something in rollout. I'm going to turn on the social media buttons feature for developers only. I'm going to go to production. Isn't that beautiful? It works as expected. At which point, I'm happy with it. You happy with it?
Yeah, let's go. Yep. Let's do it. Green, push.
That's enabled for everybody.
It's on.
It's quite uneventful.
You guys excited? You guys excited about this?
Yeah.
Yeah?
Social media.
Well, we were.
We were very excited. We were so excited.
Yeah.
I sent a message to Sebastian last night saying, Sebastian, can you come to our room, take some photos of us? It's very important that you do this right now.
I think it was about 12:30 at the time.
It was about 12:30.
Yeah.
And we got that. There's some bloopers if you want to come see it later on. And the whole thing's in slow-mo for extra comedic effect.
Yes, it is. Our voices are quite high-pitched.
So let's
recap.
Let's go back to the Venn.
Let's recap our Venn diagram. Have we done all these three things? So have we achieved what we wanted to achieve with our deployments? Well, we have our fast feedback because we've concentrated on making our test fast. From the moment that we merge a pull request, it's going to be in production. So we've sped up our delivery process, so we're shipping more often and faster. So I think we get a tick for that. Our confidence level has increased. We now have quality checks on our code. We run the tests for our code, and we deploy to the staging environment and make sure everything's fine there before we go to production. So I think we get a tick for confidence. Predictability, we're not manually deploying anymore. We've automated a process to deploy for us, and it's going to do the same thing every time until we change it. So I think it's more predictable than a manual deploy at least. So tick.
Great.
So we very scientifically got two completely different projects with almost the same amount of developers.
We did some Excel spreadsheets.
Yes. And we made this fine chart for you. I think it's a bar chart.
It's not a Venn diagram, for sure.
These are two projects. So on the left, you have the traditional manual deployment process for a project. This particular project, about four developers, was averaging 1.9 deploys per day over, this is a period of 2 weeks, the same 2 weeks, and 245 changes for each deploy. Another project, similar size, I think one less developer, same 2-week period, we're doing almost 5 deploys a day, and our changes each time are much smaller, so we're much more confident. So if we want to leave you with anything,
I'm glad someone's seen this movie.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah.
Thank you, those people.
Oh, so glad, yeah. Always be continuously deploying.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Should we do it? Should we do it?
Yeah.
I don't know if we've got time for questions.
Although we don't have time for questions, I think, for that double high 10 jumping awesomeness, we'll fit in 2.
Oh, yeah. 2
questions, 1 each. Mario first. You can't answer this one, Keith. You're out, okay? This one's for Mario.
It can be unrelated to the talk.
No, that's
not Mario.
Yeah.
Show us a magic trick.
Yeah. Can I borrow that wallet?
No.
No questions for Mario. No one wants to
We did such a good talk.
There's a question for Mario.
Yeah.
Oh, there is one.
Yes.
I come from quite a technical background, but I've moved into the business side a lot more now. And I look at that, and that's great from a technical perspective, but where's the business involvement at the approval stage to get something released? Is that test cycle that you look at?
So traditionally...
No, you're not allowed to say that.
I wasn't going to say anything, Josh.
Just make sure.
So the way we actually do ours is we've sort of simplified it there for the end process a little bit, but on Microlancer, the project that I work on day to day, in the staging environment, everything's automatically on by default no matter what. So when we push a feature out, it automatically gets turned on in staging, and it's automatically turned off initially in production unless we say so. So what we normally do is we still do a review of the work that has been delivered, but we're actually moving that review to after we've shipped. So we've shipped, and then we check that the feature does what it says it does. Whereas traditionally, you would check on a staging environment that'd be deployed, and then you have to hold and wait till you get to production. So with the feature flags, we're able to do that at a later stage, and it means one of our queues is actually reviewing, and it means that sometimes we ship a few different features, and the business will be slow to catch up. So we might have 3 or 4 cards waiting to be, that are shipped working, the code's getting touched in production, but aren't on yet. So yeah, that's how they sort of come in. Yep.
Awesome, and now we've got one for Keith. Oh, and to make it even better, you're not allowed to answer, it has to be Keith Petty.
$10 says it's magic related.
Yeah.
How did you do the flame in the wallet thing?
How did I do it? Kevlar and lighter fluid. It's boring, I know.
Yeah. Real magicians don't give away
the sorry, I used magic and continuous deployment.
Okay, everyone, thank you very much for Keith and Mario.
Thank you.